Have you ever looked up at the night sky and seen a star shining brighter than all the rest? So bright that it makes you stop, wonder, and feel something stir deep inside your heart. Long ago, on a quiet night, unlike any other, such a star appeared. It was not just beautiful. It was not random. It was a message written in light. This star announced that something extraordinary had happened. The Savior had been born. The King of Kings had entered the world, not with trumpets or royal banners, but wrapped in humility and love. While the world slept, God placed a sign in the heavens, gentle yet powerful, inviting those who were watching to pay attention. In the darkness of that night, the star became a promise that God had not forgotten his people, a promise that hope was still alive, a promise that light would always overcome darkness. This was not a star meant only to be admired. It was a star meant to be followed. God has always spoken in many ways, through prophets, through dreams, and sometimes through the quiet beauty of creation itself. That night, the sky became a sacred page, and the star was God's handwriting, pointing the way to his greatest gift. It reminded the world that even in times of silence and waiting, God is still working, still guiding, still calling hearts toward him. The birth of Jesus did not begin with loud celebration, but with a soft glow in the darkness. And yet, that light was strong enough to travel across deserts, strong enough to awaken faith, and strong enough to lead seekers to the very heart of God's love. From the very beginning, the story of Jesus is a story of light, given freely to all who are willing to look up, to wonder, and to follow. Far away from Bethlehem, in lands shaped by deserts and endless skies, lived three wise men. Their names were Melchior, Gaspar, and Balthazar. People called them Magi, not because they were kings, but because they were seekers. They studied the stars, observed the seasons, and searched for meaning beyond what the eyes could see. They believed that creation itself spoke of a greater truth, and they listened with patient hearts. Night after night, they looked up at the heavens. To many, the stars were simply beautiful lights. But to these wise men, the stars were signs, whispers of God written across the sky. They knew that the world was not guided by chance alone. They trusted that God had a plan, and that those who truly sought would be guided toward it. When the new star appeared, brighter and different from any they had ever seen, they felt it immediately in their hearts. This was not just a scientific discovery. This was a holy invitation. Something within them stirred, a quiet but powerful certainty that a great king had been born. A king sent not only for one nation, but for the whole world. The wise men did not hesitate. They did not ignore the sign or explain it away. Instead, they chose faith over comfort. They chose trust over fear. Though they did not yet know the full story, they believed that God was leading them, step by step, toward something greater than themselves. Their wisdom was not only found in books or charts of stars, but in their willingness to follow the truth, wherever it might lead. With hearts open and minds alert, their journey of faith began not in a palace or a temple, but under the quiet glow of a star, calling them to rise, to leave what was familiar, and to seek the one who would change the world forever. Following the star was not easy. The wise men left behind their homes, their routines, and the safety of familiar places. Before them stretched a long road through the desert, filled with unknown dangers and hard days. The journey demanded patience, courage, and trust, especially when the path ahead was unclear. By day, the desert was harsh. The sun burned hot above them. The wind whipped sand into the air, and every step felt heavy. Water was precious, rest was short, and the road seemed endless. There were moments when the wise men must have felt tired and unsure, wondering how much farther they would need to go. Yet each night, when darkness covered the land, the star appeared again, steady, faithful, and bright. That light became their comfort. It reminded them that they were not walking alone. Even when they could not see the full journey, they could see the next step. The star did not explain everything, but it guided them forward, teaching them to trust God one moment at a time. Faith often grows this way. It is not born in ease, but shaped through effort and perseverance. The wise men learned to keep moving, even when the road was difficult, believing that God would lead them exactly where they needed to be. Their journey was more than a physical trip across the desert. It was a journey of the heart. With every mile, their trust deepened. With every night under the star, their hope grew stronger. The desert did not weaken their faith. It refined it. Step by step, guided by light in the darkness, the wise men continued on, certain that the God who had called them would remain faithful until the very end. Before beginning their long journey, the wise men carefully prepared gifts for the child they believed was the newborn king. These were not ordinary presents, chosen by chance. Each gift carried a deep meaning, revealing who Jesus truly was and what his life would bring to the world. The first gift was gold. Gold was the most precious treasure of the ancient world, given to kings and rulers. By offering gold, the wise men honored Jesus as a king, not a king of armies or palaces, but a king sent by God. Even as a child, lying in a simple home, Jesus was worthy of royal honor. This gift showed that his authority came from heaven, not from human power. It reminded everyone that true leadership is found in love, humility, and service. The second gift was frankincense. Frankincense was a sweet-smelling incense used in worship and prayer. It was offered to God in the temple, rising like a prayer toward heaven. By bringing frankincense, the wise men declared something extraordinary. This child was not only a king, but also divine. Jesus was God with us. Through this gift, they expressed their belief that he came from God and belonged to God, bringing heaven close to earth. The third gift was myrrh. Myrrh was used as a perfume, but it was also used to prepare bodies for burial. This gift carried a quieter, more serious meaning. It pointed to suffering and sacrifice. Though Jesus came as a child full of promise and hope, his life would one day include pain and sorrow. Myrrh reminded the world that he would give his life to save others, bringing forgiveness, healing, and salvation to all. Together, these three gifts told a powerful story. Gold spoke of kingship. Frankincense spoke of divinity. Myrrh spoke of suffering and redemption. The wise men may not have fully understood everything, but through their gifts, they honored Jesus for who he truly was and what he came to do. Yet more important than the treasures they carried was the faith in their hearts. God was pleased not only with what they gave, but with the love, trust, and devotion behind each gift. Through the wise men, we learn that the greatest offering we can bring to Jesus is not gold or riches, but a heart willing to honor him as King, worship him as God, and follow him with trust and love. As we follow the journey of the wise men, many parents tell us how these stories help their children understand faith in a gentle way. If you'd like something simple to continue this story at home, we've created a free Nativity Journey coloring book for children. You'll find the link in the description below. After many long days of travel, the wise men finally arrived in Jerusalem, the city of kings. Believing they were close to their journey's end, they asked a simple but powerful question. Where is the newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. Their words stirred the city and reached the ears of King Herod, the ruler of the land. Herod was troubled. He sat on a grand throne, surrounded by wealth and guards, yet his heart was filled with fear. He was called a king, but he ruled by power and control, not by love. When he heard of a newborn king, he felt threatened. He was afraid of losing his position, his authority, and his comfort. With a false smile and gentle words, Herod called the wise men to him. He asked them carefully about the star and where the child might be found. Then he said, "Go and search for the child. When you find him, come back and tell me, so that I too may go and worship him." But Herod's words hid a dark plan. He did not want to worship Jesus. He wanted to destroy him. In this moment, two kingdoms stood side by side. One was built on fear, lies, and selfish power. The other was being revealed quietly through a child, marked by truth, humility, and light. Though Herod seemed strong, his power was empty. Though Jesus was small and hidden, God's plan was unstoppable. The wise men left the palace and stepped back into the night. The glitter of Herod's court faded behind them, and once again, the true light began to guide their way. This meeting reminded the world that human power can never stand against God's purpose, and that light will always overcome darkness.
Declare his glory.
As the wise men left Jerusalem, the night grew quiet again. The noise of the palace faded behind them, and once more the star appeared in the sky. This time, it shone even brighter, as if rejoicing. It moved ahead of them, and then stopped right above a small home in Bethlehem. The long journey was finally coming to an end. There was no palace, no guards, no signs of earthly greatness. Just a simple house, resting quietly under the glow of the star. When the wise men stepped inside, they did not find gold-covered walls or royal decorations. Instead, they found Mary and Joseph, and with them, the child Jesus. Everything was humble, gentle, and peaceful. Yet in that simplicity, they felt something holy. The room seemed filled with a deep calm, a quiet joy that words could not explain. Before them was a child, small, fragile, and completely dependent. Yet their hearts knew the truth. This was the king they had been seeking. This was the one the star had been pointing to all along. The wise men were not disappointed. They were not confused. They were overwhelmed with joy. All the miles they had traveled, all the nights in the desert, all the questions along the way suddenly made sense. God had led them not to power, but to love, not to riches, but to grace. In that simple home, heaven touched earth. The presence of God was not loud or dramatic, but gentle and near. The wise men understood that true greatness does not need to shine outwardly. God had chosen to meet them in humility, reminding the world that his greatest gifts often come wrapped in simplicity. And there, before the child Jesus, their searching hearts finally found peace. When the wise men saw the child Jesus, they did not speak right away. Words felt too small for what their hearts were experiencing. Slowly, they knelt down. Before a tiny child in a simple home, they bowed low. This was true worship, not loud or proud, but quiet, humble, and full of love. They understood that worship is not about how important we feel, but about recognizing who God truly is. In that moment, the wise men were not scholars or travelers. They were servants before their king. Their long journey had led them to this single act: to adore, to honor, and to give themselves completely. One by one, they opened their treasures and placed their gifts before Jesus. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh were laid down gently. But what mattered most was invisible. They offered their trust, they offered their faith, they offered their hearts. Every gift was a sign of love, saying without words, "We belong to you." Mary and Joseph watched quietly, deeply moved. They saw strangers from distant lands kneeling before their child, and they knew once again that God was doing something far greater than they could imagine. This child was not only theirs, he was a gift for the whole world. In that simple room, worship filled the air. There was no music, no crowd, no celebration, but heaven was pleased. The wise men taught the world a powerful lesson. True worship begins when we humble ourselves, let go of our pride, and come before God with sincere love. To worship Jesus is to give him more than words or gifts. It is to offer our whole heart, just as the wise men did, trusting that he receives every act of love with joy. That night, after worshiping the child Jesus and offering their gifts, the wise men rested. Their hearts were full, yet God was not finished guiding. As they slept, God spoke to them in a dream. They were warned not to return to King Herod, for his heart was filled with evil, and he intended to harm the child. When morning came, the wise men did not ignore the warning. They did not argue or delay. They trusted the voice of God more than the words of a powerful king. Though Herod had authority on earth, they knew that God's authority was greater. Obedience now mattered more than comfort or safety. So they made a quiet but courageous choice. Instead of returning to Jerusalem, they set out for home by another way. The road was unfamiliar and the path uncertain, but their hearts were at peace. They had followed the star to Jesus, and now they chose to follow God's direction, even when it meant changing their plans. This moment marked a turning point. The wise men did not only find Jesus, they were changed by him. Their journey did not end at the manger. It continued in obedience. By choosing God's way over human power, they showed that true faith listens, trusts, and acts. Returning by another way was more than a change of direction. It was a sign of inner transformation. Those who truly meet Christ can never walk the same path again. Guided by God's wisdom, the wise men went home with renewed hearts, carrying not just memories of the child, but a deeper faith that would guide them for the rest of their lives. Not long after the wise men had gone home by another way, God continued to watch over the child, Jesus and his family. Once again, God spoke through a dream. An angel appeared to Joseph and warned him of the danger ahead. King Herod was searching for the child, filled with anger and fear. Jesus was not safe. Joseph did not hesitate. In the quiet of the night, he woke Mary, gathered their few belongings, and took the child Jesus into his arms. Before the sun rose, they began their journey to Egypt. It was a difficult road, filled with uncertainty, but Joseph trusted God completely. He knew that the same God who had guided the wise men would now guide his family. Egypt was a foreign land, far from home, yet it became a place of refuge. There, the Holy Family was protected until the danger had passed. Herod's power did not last, but God's promise did. When Herod died, the threat was gone, and once again, God's plan moved forward. This moment reminds us that God is always faithful. Even when danger seems near, even when the future feels uncertain, God does not abandon those he loves. He watches, he warns, and he provides a way to safety. The flight into Egypt shows us a tender truth. God protects his children. The Savior of the world was not left alone. From the very beginning, Jesus' life was surrounded by God's loving care, proving that nothing, no fear, no ruler, no darkness can ever stop God's saving plan. The story of the wise men teaches lessons of faith that remain true for every generation. Above all, it reminds us that God is always at work, even when events seem confusing or difficult. The journey of the star, the long road through the desert, the meeting with Herod, and the quiet escape into Egypt were not accidents. God used every moment to fulfill his loving plan. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was outside his care. This story also teaches us that the greatest gift we can offer God is not something we hold in our hands, but what we carry in our hearts. The wise men brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but what truly pleased God was their faith. They trusted, they obeyed, they followed. Their gifts mattered because they were given with love and humility. In the same way, God is not impressed by wealth or status. What He desires most is a heart that is open, sincere, and willing to belong to Him. Finally, we learn that God's light always guides those who truly seek Him. The wise men were not perfect. They did not know everything, but they were attentive. They looked up, they listened, and because they searched with honest hearts, God led them step by step to Jesus. The light did not rush them or force them. It gently guided them until they reached the Savior. These lessons speak to us today. God still works through the events of our lives. He still asks for our hearts more than our achievements. And He still offers His light to anyone willing to seek Him with sincerity. When we trust God, give Him our hearts, and follow His light, we too are led closer to Jesus, the true source of joy, hope, and peace. Thank you for sharing this quiet moment with us. If this story has brought peace or meaning to your family, we warmly invite you to subscribe to Bible Animated and receive our free Nativity Journey coloring book for your children. Simply check the link in the description, fill out the short form, and enjoy this small gift as you continue the journey of faith at home.